When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
Welcome to Thoughts from a Page, a member of the Evergreen Podcasts Network. I'm Cindy Burnett, and I am so glad you're here. I personally select and read every book featured on the show so I can bring you thoughtful, spoiler-free author interviews. Whether you're deciding what to read next or looking for deeper insight after finishing a book, you're in the right place. I hope these conversations will enrich your reading life. In addition to the podcast, I write a monthly column, Buzz Reads, featuring my top 5 picks for each month, which is linked in the show notes. If you're looking for the best books to read this summer, don't miss my summer reading guide, also linked in the show notes. If you enjoy the show, rating and reviewing it on Apple or Spotify really helps new listeners find me. If you're looking to contribute to the show financially, you can support me on Patreon or with a one-time contribution on PayPal, Venmo, or Buy Me a Coffee. It takes a long time to grow a show, and I continue to find a larger audience thanks to you, my loyal listeners. I am so grateful. Today, Julie Clark returns, this time to chat about The Ghostwriter. As soon as I saw the cover on this one, I knew I had to read it. It is just a stunning cover. It will be one of my favorites of 2025. Julie is the New York Times bestselling author of The Last Flight and The Lies I Tell, earning starred reviews from Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, and Library Journal. And the New York Times has called The Last Flight thoroughly absorbing. She lives in Los Angeles with her 2 sons and a golden doodle with poor impulse control. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
On top of building this fake volcano for months, I give my daughter Smarty Pants vitamins to support her brain health. So her science fair project sounds more like and less like. And while I may say it's not a competition, of course it's a f***ing competition. Choose Smarty Pants vitamins to support your kid's brain health and save the science fair. Shop on Amazon, smartypantsvitamins.com, or at Target today.
So good, so good, so good.
Ready to rack to school and save big? Get to your Nordstrom Rack store today for thousands of deals from just $20.
Because I want to look fresh.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
I got a new backpack.
Score everyone's favorite denim, sneakers, boots, and activewear from Nike, Levi's, Steve Madden, Madewell, and Free People. Great brands, great prices. Everyone's got a reason to rack. Shop Nordstrom Rack and make it the best school year ever.
Welcome back, Julie. How are you today?
I'm so well, thank you.
I'm really glad you're here, and I'm looking forward to chatting about The Ghostwriter.
I'm excited.
So normally when I'm interviewing authors, I do it before the book has come out, but you and I couldn't get our schedules to align. Now we get to talk about all the great things that have been happening with this book. It was a Book of the Month pick. It hit the New York Times. It Publishers Weekly starred review. You must be thrilled.
Yes, I am very thrilled.
That has to be exciting. Would you give me a quick synopsis of The Ghostwriter?
So The Ghostwriter is the story of Olivia Dumont, who is a ghostwriter, and she's pretty much tanked her ghostwriting career. No one will hire her. She's about to lose her house and be financially destitute when her agent calls her with a pretty unusual job, which is to ghostwrite Vincent Taylor's last horror novel. Now, Vincent Taylor is sort of like a Stephen King adjacent, very famous horror writer who has been thrilling the world with his dark tales since the 80s. And he is getting on in years and needs a ghostwriter for his last novel. And Olivia does not want to take the job for a lot of reasons. Number one, because he is her estranged father, which she wants nothing to do with him. And number two, because Vincent Taylor is not only famous for writing scary, dark stories, He's also famous for being the only suspect in the brutal murder of his brother Danny and sister Poppy in 1975. And so when Olivia reluctantly agrees to take this job, she soon learns that it isn't a novel that Vincent wants her to write. It is the memoir of what really happened in 1975.
And most people don't know that he is her father.
Nobody knows.
Right. So that adds just another layer to the story, which I thought was really interesting. So tell me how you came up with the ideas for this one.
Well, I'm always interested in family dynamics, family relationships, and the ghostwriter gives me a lot of different opportunities to explore that. So, for example, in the current timeline, Olivia and her father are sort of walking delicately around each other, trying to figure out how to be in the same room again after over 20 years of not speaking. And Olivia's trying to make her peace with the childhood that she had based on the fact that Vincent was a horrible father to her. He did not know how to parent her. He was caught up in his own life and his own trauma from what happened to his brother and sister when he was 15, 16 years old. And then it also has an opportunity to explore sibling dynamics in 1975 between Vincent, his older brother Danny, and his younger sister Poppy, who live on the page in the 1975 chapter. So you get to kind of see what was going on back then in Ojai of 1975 and all of the dynamics of the siblings leading up until that night, June 13th, 1975.
And how did you settle on ghostwriter for Olivia's profession? I think that would be such an interesting job.
I'll be honest, I don't remember. I think maybe it just was something that appealed to me in the sense that, like, it gave Olivia an opportunity to be exposing, like, her whole fame and her whole, like, reputation is built on her telling the story of strong women who have broken the glass ceilings in their chosen careers. And Olivia, I felt, was a really good person to want to do that. And then being forced to ghostwrite a memoir that is directly related to the trauma that sits at the center of her family while trying to keep it a secret from everybody was just really compelling for me.
A great way to get her back together with her father.
It needed to be something really big and really important and something that she couldn't say no to, because as you will understand after reading the book, like, Olivia has every reason not to want a relationship with him, and they're all very understandable.
One of the really interesting things about this book was memory. To me, memory is so fascinating. How we remember things, how everyone's perception of the same event differs, how memories change over time. And then on top of that, you throw in the fact that Vincent has Lewy body dementia. So let's talk a little bit about memory and then how you chose Lewy body.
Well, yes, memory is definitely something that I'm fascinated by, because I feel like it doesn't matter that two people could be living the same experience. Their perceptions of what's happening can be very different. So even in present time, Olivia has one recollection of her childhood. Her father has a very different one. And back in the 1975 chapters, we're seeing things from the perspective of Poppy or from the perspective of Vincent, and they're informing our knowledge of the stories that Vincent is trying to tell Olivia in the present time, and they don't always line up. And some of that is the Lewy body dementia that Vincent is just starting to kind of struggle with. And some of it is also that he's a professional liar, and he lies well and he lies happily. So it's hard to know whether he's telling the truth based on what his truth is, or whether he's lying deliberately to mislead her. I chose Lewy body, I think, because I felt like Alzheimer's is something very well known. I had a good friend whose father passed away from Lewy body dementia a few years ago, and it just kind of ticked all the boxes for what I needed for a degenerative disease. And I really was looking for something where a person would have hallucinations, which Vincent does. And hallucinations are very common in Lewy body dementia. And I was happy to kind of bring that to the forefront, because I think a lot of people really struggle as caretakers of people who have Lewy body dementia. It is a hard road to walk.
I think that's right. And my father had Alzheimer's, not Lewy body, but we interacted with other people who did have Lewy body while he had Alzheimer's. And they're all horrible diseases. Dementia is just the worst.
Yes.
Did you have to do a lot of research about that?
I did. I mean, I talked to people. I listened in on support groups and just did a lot of research on it. But again, like, I try not to lose myself in research because I feel like you can bog yourself down with it. And pretty soon you get so excited about how much you know about it and you want to include all of it to show how much you know about it. And then pretty soon the reader is like, I'm bored and you're pulling me out of the story. So I try to only research the stuff that I actually need for the book. And then I try to step away because it's really easy to get lost in it.
Well, not only that, but you learn all of these interesting details that you want to impart to the reader. And so it can be difficult to say, okay, I would love to teach everybody all of these things. They will find it so fascinating. But you're right. The reader's like, am I reading a thriller or a tome on Lewy body? Which, of course, you don't do at all. You balance it quite well. But I could see where it would be hard to resist sometimes wanting to put all of these details into a book.
Definitely. I mean, I struggled with that with the Ojai setting as well. You know, it's near where I live. I've been there before. And I didn't want it to take over the book. And so I really only wanted it to shine through on the 1975 chapters, because that's really where Ojai plays a strong part in the story versus the Ojai of today, which is a lot fancier and not nearly as rural as it used to be in the 70s.
Well, and you mentioned the 1970s, which is one of the things I wanted to talk about. I love reading about that time period, the music, the culture, the clothes. There's just so much that came from that time period. And it's such a really big time for change. All of these changes occurred then that we're still feeling now. So it's always fascinating to read about it.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the 70s, and a large part of my childhood memories come from the 70s and early 80s. And so for me, I felt like that was the era that I wanted to revisit, only because I felt like there were so many things I wanted to work in. And it just so happened that Ojai in the 70s was a place where kids had a huge amount of freedom to come and go, to hitchhike, to steal beer off people's back porches, to get high, get drunk in the woods. All of it was, happening in Ojai. The kids were bored and thought that Ojai was a small town, boring town. Everything good happens in Ventura. And so just kind of showing that on the page was really fun.
And what was it like toggling back and forth in time as well as across numerous points of view?
Always challenging. This particular book I wrote straight through from beginning to end. And when I felt like I needed a 1975 chapter, I would pop one in and I would kind of think like, okay, who is it that we need to hear from right now? Who is it that's going to push the plot forward? Is it going to be Vincent? Is it going to be Poppy? And what is it that I need them to show me and the reader so that when we go back to Olivia, we're informed enough to know what's happening and where the story's going?
Did you have to edit that a bunch? I mean, you wrote straight through, but did it stay in the format that you wrote for the most part? Were there a ton of changes?
I mean, there's always a ton of changes from your first draft to your last draft. It's a completely different book, almost unrecognizable. So I think that there are always going to be big, huge changes. I don't believe I started out with a Poppy POV. I think I had Lydia as a POV, which is Olivia's mother and Vincent's girlfriend at the time. And I just kind of decided with one of my close writer friends who read the book that Lydia doesn't really push the story forward and that Poppy was really where the energy was. And once I figured that out, then Poppy's chapters just pretty much wrote themselves.
And then you just inserted them back in wherever they fit.
Yes.
Well, writing a thriller has to be difficult for some of the reasons that we've talked a little bit about. But what I'm curious about the most is how you handle your reveals in terms of all these little details need to be coming out over time, enough to get the reader where they need to be at the end, but not too much that everybody gets to the end and says, well, of course, that's how it ends. So how do you handle that?
Very carefully. I think that at the beginning, I personally have a tendency to be pretty heavy-handed with my clues and hints and stuff. And it always helps when I, as the writer, am not quite sure. Originally, I think in the first draft, I had somebody completely different being the killer than I did in the final draft. And that helps when, you have to go back and really change something so drastically that there aren't really any overt clues to it, because I didn't know at the time I was writing the beginning of the book that that's how it would end up turning out. And then you do have to kind of go back and massage it a little bit and make sure that you have enough in there to let readers look back and say, okay, I see it now. I didn't see it then. And that's sort of the goal. And you're always going to get readers who say, well, I figured this out on page 20. I figured this out on page 100. And that's awesome because that just means they're invested in their thinking. But, for the most part with this one, I'm hearing a lot of people who just couldn't see how it was going to resolve and then were pleasantly, happily surprised.
And I'm one of those people because I do read so many thrillers and mysteries that I can sometimes figure stuff out. And it doesn't bother me as long as I feel like it's still, I get to the end and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's good. And it wasn't super overt. But in this one, I didn't. I got to the end because I kept thinking what you were saying, like, how is this going to end? So I was really glad that I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was because I wasn't sure for a very long time how I wanted it to end, which is unusual for me and very uncomfortable for me because I like to know how my books are going to end pretty early on. But with this one, I didn't.
You just kept having to mess around until you landed on the right person.
Yes.
Well, secrets never stay hidden, and that is something that seems to really resonate with readers. Stories about secrets that try to stay tamped down but never do. Why do you think that is such a popular theme?
I think because whenever somebody has a secret, everyone wants to know it. And I think that's just human nature, So if there is a character who's harboring a secret, readers want to know what that secret is, and they'll keep turning the pages until they find out what that is. I think that secrets are kind of the bread and butter of fiction in general, not just thrillers, because who doesn't love a big, juicy secret?
I do agree with that. It is definitely not something that is just limited to thrillers and mysteries. Secrets do make up, I think, a fair amount of fiction stories because, yes, you're working towards something.
Right. You're either working toward discovering the secret, working toward confirming the secret, working toward refuting the secret. And if, I've never met a person who has said like, oh, you have a big secret. I don't want to know. Right?
Don't tell me
what it is. That's just unheard of.
And I think trauma is a similar subject matter in terms of how trauma impacts a family, how it reverberates down generations. That's clearly something that is being discussed and debated and pursued in this story.
Definitely. And that's a long time interest of mine, the fact that trauma can genetically be passed on through your DNA. And it's been proven time and time again through epigenetics that if somebody endures a horrible trauma, whether it is genocide or famine or whatever, it's been proven that your genetics are altered and that your descendants will be affected by that in some way. So I think they did a study on Holocaust survivors, and their descendants were disproportionately more inclined toward anxiety and depression than those who were not descendants from Holocaust survivors. And they did another one with the famine of the Ireland famine, I think. And so it's just a really interesting thing. And it's not just genetically that trauma gets passed on, but like when somebody has lived through something like Vincent Taylor has lived through, like the brutal murder of his older brother and younger sister, a bloody, bloody mess. And you have to, as the only remaining sibling, live your life after that. How does that affect you as a human being? How does that affect you as a father, as a partner? And obviously, for the sake of this particular book, like Vincent doesn't really get the help he needs. And he copes in a lot of really unhealthy ways and parents in a lot of really unhealthy ways that don't always show him in the greatest light.
I just can't even imagine surviving something like that. And not only does he survive it, but then people think that he potentially was involved. So you really have two big traumas there.
Yes. And also, not to forget, though, that Vincent Taylor is somewhat of a narcissist.
Right.
And he leans into that attention. It's not that he hides away from it. He refuses to speak about it in the same way that people would say, I have a giant secret, but I can't tell you. He leans into that sort of mythology and uses it, I think, to make himself a world famous horror author. People buy his books because of who he is and maybe what he did.
He definitely profits from it. But you also wonder on some level, is it because he never got any help? And how do you, on your own as a teenager in that formative time period, ever recover from what he went through?
Well, and his parents were not really into parenting. So,
I love that.
well, yeah, typical 70s parents, dad worked all the time and then came home and had his drink and talked politics at the table. And mom was a homemaker who drank too much during the day and couldn't handle the conflicts between her children. She just couldn't manage it. So she ignored it. And so after the death of two of their children, I think they were even less equipped to or less inclined to be parents. And Vincent grew up in that environment. He had to go back into that house and live in that house for a while after the murders happened because there was nowhere else for them to go. And I think he is a product of all of that. And if I've done my job well, I want the reader to know how hard Vincent had it, starting from even before the deaths of his brother and sister. And once they kind of understand where he's coming from and what he was carrying all those years, a little bit of empathy for him, even though he's a horrible, horrible father and did horrible, horrible things, mostly neglect. But you can now look back and kind of see him for who he was trying to be for his daughter, to the best of his ability, using the tools that he had available at the time, which was cocaine, alcohol, and a lot of money.
Exactly. I think back on that. If I had two of my three children murdered, I don't think I'd get out of bed. So, I know they weren't great parents to start, but it would be difficult to be a great parent after such an event, whether you were a great parent ahead of time or not.
For sure. Absolutely true. Yes.
I just can't imagine.
Mm-mm.
So let's talk about a reader response. You've been out on book tour. Have there been things that readers have connected with or pointed out to you or been interested in that surprised you?
I think what surprises me the most is how many people are completely baffled by how the book is going to end until the book ends and how truly surprised they are by that. And like I said earlier, there are people who have figured it out right away and whatever, but I'm surprised by how many people are really and truly not sure. That's been fun for me to listen to and to talk to people about that.
I bet so, because you feel like you really did your job.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this stunning cover. I love your cover. Do you love it?
I do. I absolutely love it. Yes.
I remember when you first revealed it and I was like, okay, I don't even care what that book's about. I'm going to read it because the cover is so good.
Right. I know. And then there are the sprayed edges, which are absolutely stunning as well. I've never seen sprayed edges that look like this.
So we've been having this conversation with a variety of authors because I was at an event with Flatiron a while ago and the editor there kept calling them spreadges, sprayed edges. Have you heard that term?
I have. I'm probably not going to use it, but I don't have a problem with it. I don't think it's that hard to say sprayed edges.
I had just never heard it. And so then I was like, oh, spreadges. I agree with you. I think sprayed edges are probably better. I have not seen a finished copy. I have multiple galleys.
No.
But I'm now thinking I need to get one so I can see the sprayed edges.
They are something else. And I believe our first print run is the only opportunity to have them. So I would hurry up because we're getting close to a second print run.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, and what about settling on the title, The Ghostwriter? Was that always the title? Did you all land on it after a while? How did that come about?
It was always the title for me. Sourcebooks likes to test market things and check in and make sure they have the best title possible. So it took a little while for them to confirm that was the best title, but it was always going to be the title as far as I was concerned.
It's interesting how titles come about because I feel like either it's just like you described, it starts out that way and it ends up that way, or there's so much drama and it's like 300 titles later, here we are.
Yes. And I do think with The Last Flight, that was a challenging title. We just could not land on anything. And this was before we went on submission with it. But my agent and I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for so long. And then I believe she came up with The Last Flight. And we both were like, yeah, that's it. That's it. Thank God, because it's awful.
I love that book so much. I'm glad you mentioned it. Well, before we wrap up, Julie, what are some books you have read recently that you really liked?
I have been obsessing over The Names by Florence Knapp, Knapp. I absolutely loved it. and how it ties together sort of how your name can influence your life and who you are and how the world perceives you. And because of that, sort of your fate. That book I thought was just brilliant. So I loved that book.
I feel like that has been a popular one. And that sliding doors concept
Yes.
always resonates, I think, with people. It's just so interesting to think about what would have happened this way, what would have happened that way.
Yes, for sure.
Good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Thoughts from a Page podcast. It was really fun to chat again.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It was good to talk.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
When kids don't play, they grow up without creativity. They'll try to blend in and wear chinos, or worse, polyester chinos. Good thing Gushers, Fruit by the Foot, and Fruit Roll-Ups are made to be played with. You better be playing.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I would love to connect with you on Instagram or Facebook, where you can find me at Thoughts from a Page. If you enjoy the show and have a moment to rate it or subscribe to it wherever you listen to your podcasts, I would really appreciate it. It makes a huge difference. And please tell all of your friends about Thoughts from a Page. Word of mouth does wonders to help the show grow. The book discussed in this episode can be purchased at my bookshop storefront, and the link is in the show notes. I hope you'll tune in next time.